At 6, police say 378 people have been arrested so far after a week of violence. As the clear-up continues after the latest riots over the weekend, the Prime Minister says the criminal justice system is being ramped up to cope with the number of arrests. Police warn the numbers will keep rising as more people involved in the violence are identified. It started after the Southport stabbings. Tonight, a vigil to mark a week since 3 children died. Sir Keir Starmer says the government is ramping up the criminal justice system to deal with the numbers charged with being involved in riots over the weekend, with some already appearing in court today. Police say 378 arrests have been made since the violence started last week, and they expect that total to rise every day as more are identified. The Prime Minister also announced what he called a standing army of specialist police officers to tackle violent protests. The unrest began last week in Southport after the fatal stabbings of 3 girls. Posts on social media wrongly blamed the attacks on a Muslim migrant. The riots have spread across England and Northern Ireland, with shops looted, police officers assaulted and petrol bombs thrown at hotels housing asylum seekers. The worst of that violence yesterday was in Rotherham. Our UK affairs correspondent Daniel Sanford is there for us now. Daniel.
Yes, Sophie, there were frightening scenes at this Holiday Inn yesterday. Police officers were barely able to control the hundreds of protesters outside, some of whom were intent on getting inside. The asylum seekers being accommodated here have now all been moved out, and concerns about further violence across the UK meant the Cobra emergency meeting met in Whitehall to make sure there's enough riot officers, courts and prosecutors for the days ahead. After the wanton violence of the night before, today the meticulous work of gathering evidence, collecting fingerprints at the Holiday Inn Express in Wath-upon-Dearne just outside Rotherham, so detectives can bring the rioters to justice. Last night's disorder here led the Prime Minister to promise that a force of 6,000 riot-trained police officers will be established for the summer that can be sent anywhere in England and Wales.
I'm absolutely clear that we will have the officers we need, where we need them, to deal with this disorder. And that is why the standing army has been set up, specialist officers ready to be deployed to support communities.
The riots here left 12 police officers injured. Dozens more have been hurt across the week. Protesters broke into the hotel housing migrants and rampaged through corridors, terrifying those inside. South Yorkshire Police said today that some of the rioters not only wanted to damage the hotel, they also wanted to cause serious harm to the residents and staff inside. As the police gathered evidence, neighbours worked together to repair their homes after fence planks and logs were looted from their gardens to be used as missiles and battering rams. Chris Shaw's frightened wife had to leave.
It was like mob rule last night, and obviously when there was a few of them in the garden, I told her to go. She was frightened to death. And she took the cat in the basket and went to my friend's house.
It makes no sense. This has been a riot about those kids getting stabbed, which is so awful. My heart goes out to those families, but there's kids in this building. They were trying to set them on fire last night. They were trying to burn them alive. And I think it's absolutely disgusting.
This is the moment he's referring to, when a wheelie bin was pushed up against a door and set on fire.
Officers have worked through the night to begin identifying those involved in these horrendous scenes. Please be assured, if you were there, we will find you, and you will be held accountable for your part in yesterday's violence.
Since last Tuesday, 378 people have now been arrested across the UK linked to the riots and disorder, and police say they expect that number to rise significantly. Meanwhile, forces are braced for more trouble. Daniel Sanford, BBC News, Rotherham.
Well, they've also been cleaning up at another Holiday Inn, this time in Tamworth in Staffordshire, which came under attack last night. Local people say many of the rioters came from outside the area. Navtesh Johal reports.
Early evening in Tamworth, and the sparks of violence ignite. Last night, this was the scene at a hotel in the town housing asylum seekers. The crowd clashes with the police. Officers are attacked, even sprayed with a fire extinguisher, anything that could be used as a weapon. What message are they trying to send? It soon becomes clear. This footage, given exclusively to the BBC, was filmed by a local resident. As the evening wears on, the crowd forced their way inside. None of the residents were hurt, but a police officer was injured. The asylum seekers have all been moved to alternative accommodation. Lee Bates works for a local charity which has helped the asylum seekers in the hotel. He says last night has left them shaken.
We're absolutely petrified. I mean, you can't imagine, you know, these people have families. They have people at home who must have been watching in horror at what was unfolding.
Today, the council and local residents have been clearing up last night's mess.
I'm really sad. It's really upsetting to think this has actually happened on the doorstep of where I live. It's really upsetting with all the damage that's been caused.
I don't understand the mentality of it one iota, and I don't understand people coming down just to watch last night either. I was amazed to see people, and some people that I knew with families down here watching.
The damage will be repaired, but the scars of what this incident has done to the town will take longer to fade. Navtesh Johal, BBC News, Tamworth.
So police say 378 arrests have been made since the rioting in towns and cities in England began a week ago. Some of those charged have been appearing in court already today. Daniel De Simone looks at those facing charges.
Under arrest, but is the situation under control, and what inflamed it? After a weekend of violence, today came a series of court appearances. Those charged include a boy of 14 and a pensioner aged 69. Some could face years in prison. John Honey, seen in the St George's Cross t-shirt, is charged with violent disorder, visible in a stream of online videos in Hull on Saturday, leaving looted stores, and part of this terrifying attack, forcing the car's occupants to flee for their lives. A range of people took part in the disorder, from children to long-term far-right activists. One of those present in Southport was a convicted terrorist, neo-Nazi Matthew Hankinson, using the mayhem to promote a race war. A former head of counter-terror policing says some violence has crossed the threshold into terrorism.
We have seen serious acts of violence designed to cause terror to a section of our community which have crossed the line into terrorism, and I hope my successors are looking at that very closely.
The targeting of hotels believed to be housing migrants comes after years of demonisation by the far right, with lists of hotels shared on social media, making it hard to know where might be struck next. On X, far-right convicted criminal Stephen Yaxley Lennon, also known as Toby Robertson, spent the weekend inciting his thousands of followers, all from the safety of a sun lounger in Cyprus. He was handed back his X account by the firm's owner, Elon Musk, who posted saying the UK was heading to civil war. X hasn't replied to the BBC's request for comment.
No, everyone who runs a social media platform should be responsible. That's what's got to change. Stronger laws and social media companies who are called to account. And if they are not willing to exercise corporate social responsibility, they should be legislated against, or we should be appealing to their advertisers to cut their funding.
Partly because of social media, police fear this wave of violence is far from over. Daniel De Simone, BBC News.
Our political correspondent Ben Wright is in Westminster. And Ben, tell us more about what the Prime Minister was saying today, how the government can tackle this violence.
Well, Sophie, no government wants to see violence and mayhem on the streets, and this is a big early test for the new Prime Minister. Now, after chairing a meeting of the government's Emergency Response Committee, COBRA, this morning, the Prime Minister said, as we heard, that there would be a standing army, that's what he called it, of police officers specially trained, ready to help tackle these rioters. And he said the criminal justice system was ready to charge and sentence people as quickly as possible, named and shamed, whether they were rioting on the streets or inciting violence online. I think a trickier question for the government is how to get social media companies to bear down on disinformation and other material that has clearly fueled some of this unrest, and ministers have been meeting with big tech bosses here in Whitehall this afternoon. Now today the Prime Minister was emphatic about what we're seeing. He said this is not protest, this is pure violence, and I think that view is very widely shared here at Westminster. The Shadow Home Secretary James Cleverly said it was very important to make a clear distinction between what he called violent extremism on the streets and any wider discussion about immigration and asylum issues. Now in Belfast, the Northern Ireland Assembly is set to be recalled to discuss the violence that happened there on Saturday. Some MPs, a handful, have said that Westminster Parliament should do the same to discuss the violence, its causes and the response, but Sir Keir Starmer was clear today that that is not on the cards at the moment.
Ben Wright with the latest there from Westminster. Thank you. Well, a vigil is being held tonight in Southport on Merseyside for the 3 children who were stabbed to death a week ago today. 9-year-old Alice de Silva Ajar, 7-year-old Elsie Stankham and 6-year-old BB King were killed at a Taylor Swift-themed dance class. 8 other children and 2 adults were also injured. Fiona Trott reports.
In dark times, a place of light and colour, where families in Southport show their support. It means so much to the family of Leanne Lucas, who was running the class that day and tried to protect the children.
I think it's amazing, wonderful to see. Puts a smile on my face every day.
Gives you strength, does it?
Most definitely, yeah. Yeah, most definitely.
What would you say to people in Southport? What would you say to them?
Thank you. Thank you. I'll hold my hands up to every one of you. Thank you. It's heartwarming. It's just so nice to actually see.
But as well as thanks, there are feelings of anger at the violence seen on the streets.
Disgusted. Highly disgusted. Some of the people there, I even knew some of the people there. It's pathetic.
You knew some of the people that were out
Yeah, well, some of the pictures I've seen, yeah.
What would you say to them if they were here?
Just stop it. Just stop it. It's pathetic. It's like school. It's like schoolyard, having a fight in the schoolyard with some kids. It just doesn't need to happen.
Jan and daughter Ellie were also here today. As party organisers, they knew victims and helped make the happiest moments of their lives.
When we were at the vigil, a lot of the team were scouring the crowd and looking out for children. Yeah. And being like, oh, she's there, she's okay. Yeah. She's there, she's okay.
And that is something that
I
never, ever thought I would do.
Yeah, as soon as you wake up, you're checking the news, you're checking Facebook, you're checking, is there any other names come out? Is there any messages from the families? I've been struggling to sleep. I was watching things about the riots that was happening in Liverpool, and I just can't believe that it's just kind of all still going on.
The police say Leanne's now been discharged from hospital, a huge moment for the family.
Can't wait.
Tell me.
Can't wait, honestly. I really can't wait to see her. Can't wait to just tell her she's my little hero.
Fiona Trott, BBC News, Southport.
As you heard, events like this are so important to Chris's family and above all else to the victims' families and to the rest of the people here in Southport too, because when your life's been turned upside down, when you find it difficult being at work, when you can't sleep, what do? You go around, you raise money for the families, you make posters, badges, and you come here to evenings like this and you remember the girls to show their families support and let them know that you're thinking of them. There is anger here one week on as well, though, the feeling that violence has exploited the grief that people here are feeling. But as you've heard, people here in Southport will tell you that hate doesn't define this town, it's hope.